All right, traders, welcome to today's recap. This is Christian from Hertz Tribeca Trade Group, and it is Wednesday, February 6th. So basically, it looks like we got a doji today on the S&P futures. Pretty tight range, just not a lot of action going on in the overall indices. Again, some big separation in sectors, right? I mean, looking at the S&P, you look like, oh, geez, nothing really happened today. And there were some movers that took place. Let's just look at. I like to look at Nasdaq and then small caps. Same thing. Nasdaq was down. Just that's it. 17 basis points. Qs were down a little bit more because just the change, just the timing in futures versus the cash close. IWM looked like it was going to slip a couple times today. I bought a little bit of puts today in IWM, thinking that we might roll over, and we just don't have that volatility. Here was the move, and then we just kind of turn on a dime and go the other way. So I had bought some puts on the break of this, and took a target down here, but I actually re-added a little bit in here, thinking that we might have a return of volatility, and nope, just kind of very muted. And yeah, so kind of looking at these ranges, if you look at, of course, the big story was the semiconductors. Some big results from what was it yesterday? Skyworks as well as Microchip. So some really nice moves, kind of lifted the whole group again. And this was your best performer, up 2.5%. Also, solar names were strong. So really, it was semis were the standout. I don't see another sector that was up over 0.75%. Jumped over the 200-day moving average, so we're back above this range here in the semis. Let's just look at. I was looking at biotech a couple times today. It tried to get going a little bit. This is kind of interesting. We did see I think it was a big put fly yesterday, and or no, it wasn't a put fly. It was a call spread bought yesterday, and sorry, I'm saying this completely backwards. There was a put spread that was bought yesterday, and calls were sold. Now, that may be a hedge versus somebody's biotech portfolio, but bottom line, I would watch the price here, 83.11. You could see that you kind of have, which you see on a lot of charts. We were going over this in the timing research webinar yesterday, but kind of like a funky looking inverted head and shoulders going on. But the neckline would be right here. And again, it's all over the place. I can't even draw a perfect line here. So you would have to actually draw a line right in here. But yeah, I mean, I would say for just easy purposes is use this 83.11 top of value would be your best bet for the biotech, the equally weighted biotech ETF. And that's it. Some solar names and healthcare were also green. Pot stocks really got beaten up. MJ was down 5% today on the momentum. So, momentum to the upside, momentum to the downside here. We were thinking that that 39 would get taken out, but pretty close. Now, it still may get taken out, but a decent retracement back. So if you missed this move, this crazy move and momentum move that we saw in all these things and the repeat call activity, Cron, basically every day we saw calls for a period of a week or so. If I really want to cherry pick the option flow, but we did see some aggressive activity. Maybe that sits back to 1834. But again, good example of if you're in one of these momentum names, you got to be out really quick once the momentum changes. CGC. 4528 is your support. So there's some support sitting back here, but it feels like they've lost the short-term moving the 5-day moving average. The home builders were down a lot. The XLC Communications ETF was down after some big gains earlier in the week. That also. So again, you're not going to see this when you just look at the S&P and say, oh, we had a little doji. Not much happened today. What was the name that brought this down today? Because that's a lot. It's a decent move. 2.2%. Kind of the flip of almost the opposite of the SMH. Oh, it was the gaming stocks are in here. That's what it is. Yeah, so kind of a bugger with some of these ETFs. I just don't think that, and I've made this argument before because one of my favorite groups and has been over the last year has been software. But the problem is with software is with this ETF, right? It's they say it's expanded tech and software. You have the gaming stocks in here. So there is another game. There is another software ETF out there. It's PSJ. It's not exactly. I'll show you the components, but it's not my favorite ETF for other reasons. But if you look at the movers in this thing, Take Two, EA, ATVI. If you're looking over here, all bringing this whole group down, which is really a completely different group than software, in my opinion. So funny how they decided to put these three gaming stocks. I guess it wasn't an issue when they were all going up, but the gaming stocks have been going down now for a while, but just behaving a lot different than software, like business software. I put that tweet out earlier. Here's my business software index that I created. I created this back in the beginning of 2018 because there just wasn't a good ETF out there. Specifically, I looked at IGV and I said, well, I don't want IGV because uh, and this is what this is doing, right? So this is the movers. I think data is interesting. I actually put on a little bit of a trade in data today because I think it was down too much. MANH, really interesting. It just does not do well on earnings, even though I thought their numbers were pretty good. I have to read the whole earnings report, but I looked at MANH yesterday after the close and I said, their numbers are really good. Maybe they're going to break the streak. And they just completely got smoked after the open. A few other names that were weak in this group. So it wasn't all gaming out of that IGV list. Zen had a tough time holding gains too. CTSH, which reported this morning, I believe. So you could see kind of a little bit more balanced without that, without the gaming stocks in here. And again, one of the best. I go over this all the time. This group anyway. I don't know why the chart's not coming up, but. So I wanted to talk a little bit about and another name and ITB, the home builders. Decent day down, but into support for ITB. So may not be a bad place. Notice good volume here and less volume on this pullback. So if you didn't want to chase this candle, it's kind of caught a little bit in the middle of this trend line that I've got drawn and here. But this DHI, which has been kind of something I've been crying about now for a week, but they keep buying calls in DHI. So I don't know what they're up to. Who knows? Maybe they do know something. Maybe they're just picking spots as well and going. They've been buying March and they've been buying August calls and DHI. So I'm in this. I actually restructured my trade yesterday. Restructured it and it's still down because this is down 2%. So another case, I'm going to talk about this. I always go on about this stuff. But another case of option activity not panning out. August 37 calls. And the trade's not over. So, I still think it's not a terrible looking setup. But clearly it got stuffed here on the top of value and hasn't been able to get back above. But anyway, that's that name. So I want to talk a little bit about, those are some of the movers. I could talk about today's option activity, but here's my thought, and it's why, if you notice, I won't post a lot of option activity. I'll post something that's really that really kind of catches my eye. Like there was some Neo calls today. Mentioned the DHI. There was some Yum China. There was an ATVI. Dip buyer today on the weakness. GBT, which I think looks interesting. ARRY, they were buying some Gilead this morning. Big trade in Lam Research. But I'll tell you, it really depends on what you want to do. And, again, I'm very objective. I have a love-hate relationship with option activity. We were making this point. Anyway, I'm not going to go off way on a tangent with that. But personally, you have to ask yourself, do you want to be adding a lot of risk here? Because the guys who will quote option activity, it doesn't matter what the market is doing. They'll just continue to quote option activity. And what they'll do is when the market goes up, they'll say, oh, the option activity is great today. And then when the market goes down, oh, the option activity, it's not good today. There's option activity every day that we see call buying. Now there's a different there's a different level of it. Sometimes there's just there's a lot more calls versus puts that happen, and maybe a little bit more aggressive. But you have to ask yourself, going back a couple months ago, there was no major warning. And what people will do is they'll cherry pick, right? They'll go through and they'll say, "Oh, there was a big order in SPY puts," which happens basically every day. No joke. There's an order of SPY puts just about every day that are bought aggressively. But somebody will go back when there's a correction and say, "Oh, this was the order. It was this IWM put order." But bottom line is, in my opinion, again, this video is for information purposes only, but you're not going to get a warning if you follow option activity. There's nobody who's going to hit you on the top of the head. Maybe you might see a little bit more. You might see some more put active, more sizable IWM puts, SPY puts, Qs puts that may catch your eye. Aggressively somebody's, can aggressively and repetitively buying index puts, but you're still going to see call buyers come in. So, and the people who quote option activity, and don't say that they have a position in anything until it goes up. I like what Al was saying on regarding people calling out trades and never mentioning any entries in it. So you really have to do this on your own, given that make a decision about how much risk you want to take right now. Considering that's where we are right here. And again, I don't have a crystal ball. I'm not saying that now is the time to take off risk. You just have to ask yourself if you've made a decent amount of money in January, and if you're kind of content with kind of sitting back, maybe waiting for a little bit of a pullback at this point. That's a personal judgment that you have to make. But you're just not going to see that from people will say hindsight. Oh, the sentiment got higher than normal. So yeah, But meanwhile, they're still quoting option activity left and right. So I just won't do that. So if you look at my feed today, we'll talk about some options that went up today. But I'm just not going to chase a lot of things. And by all means, you could still, which I think is not a bad technique, is you could do a bit more day trading. Take the positions off at the end of the day if you're kind of worried about a pullback. So, but I wanted to spend a few minutes on it because I'm trying to think about, in regard to the portfolio that I manage, both options and stock, about how to get a little bit more defensive right now. And for me, it's basically just trying to unwind some positions, and I don't want to get caught at this point. I don't want to get greedy. I don't want to get caught in a downward move. So, and the reason why I go over this, I did not have a great trading day today, and I'm fine to admit that. But I'm also I'm going to miss some moves. I'm just not going to chase everything like I was doing a few months ago and trading a bit more active, because I thought the opportunities were pretty good. Here, I think that maybe we're running out of steam a little bit. So again, I'll look for positions. I started a position today in Trip, which had an inside day today. I like this setup, but if we get volatility that comes in, a lot of things will go down quickly. And I bought stock in this one. I think stock is a lot easier to deal with when we have volatility, because what will happen too is if you have a lot of short-term option positions on, they'll get wiped out if that happens, if we lose the upside momentum. So again, a lot of deep thoughts in this video, but trying to just tell you something that I think it's just very noisy right now. If you've got Twitter up, which I do, I look at what people are saying and what they're posting, but people will just continue to post that option activity, and you'll have you don't want to get the FOMO at this point, right? The Nigerians were talking about all the trades that worked on the halftime show. I found that a bit irritating, because it makes you feel as a retail investor, oh, I missed all these trades. And I thought there was some good. If you missed this, this was on the CNBC halftime show, which I enjoy watching. I thought, who's the other guy on the show? Forgetting his name, but he gave a nice counterpoint. Of all the option flow that we've seen, yes, some of it has worked, but also a lot of the names that have not seen any option activity have done extremely well, right? So, you could go through all the software names. Autodesk, there's been no crazy option activity in that one. Team, there's been option activity on the break on that one, right? So that was not a bad signal. And again, I use option activity for trade ideas, but the way that we're going on today on the halftime show is all these trades. Oh, this one tripled and that one tripled and anyone. There's been a lot of names in the semi space. Any semi name at this point. So the option activity has been a pretty good guide. ON, you would have had to hold through options, through earnings. Intel worked pretty well. But again, this is named in the semi space, from post earnings that works pretty well. But really, in these sectors, in the software and the semi space, it's any names basically in this group. Yeah, I mean, so you could say that yes, some of the option activity has worked really well, but it's really any names in software. So again, just trying to illustrate the point. That be careful of FOMO. Again, I don't like that people jumping up and down about profits. They make it sound so easy. And yes, everything has been moving up very nicely, but it is not trading on it over time is not easy. You'll get into runs where things have momentum and they're moving to the upside, and you could be in a whole bunch of different names that are going to move up. But a lot of times, once that momentum stops, trading is not it's not easy, and sometimes adding risk at the wrong time is a big thing. So you have to again ask yourself, and I go back to this: is this the time for you to be adding a lot of risk? So again, don't have a crystal ball, but we'll end the video there. Kind of went on for a big rant there, but I think it's really important to kind of figure out if you want to be adding risk here. All right, I'll leave it there, guys. Have a great night. See you in the trading room tomorrow morning.